Hey guys, it's Luca from EDM Prod, and today we're going to be talking about, hands down, my favorite feature or little technique, trick, whatever you would call it, as of recent. It's called velocity mapping, and I've been using it on everything. It's so crazy how in-depth and detailed you can go with it and make some really cool sounds like this one. Oh. So we're going to be checking out how to make this sound and some other sounds with velocity mapping and how you can get started as well. Quickly, if you want some free stuff, check the link in the description. I mean, who doesn't want free stuff? Come on. So what is velocity mapping? Well, velocity is a feature of MIDI. It's one of the MIDI controllable parameters within MIDI information. So if I open up my MIDI clip, this is just a rock Ableton kit, drum kit, which I've just programmed some MIDI notes, right? And if I go into the velocity tab down here, there's all these different velocities on the different notes. And if I pull down a velocity, this note gets quieter, and if you go up, it gets louder. This is the average sort of mapping of velocity. It's by default mapped to volume, which is this knob here. So here is where it's mapped. Velocity is greater than volume. This is by default mapped. In this case, it was to 45%. But if I actually put this up to 100%, you'll see that the velocity changes become much more pronounced. So if I put it up, you'll hear that snare is super loud. And when I go down to 0, it's just inaudible. And then I've got much more control over this, but this is in fact probably a little bit too much range. So if you put it down, you have more control over a smaller range. In this case, the snare is mapped to volume, like I said before, but we can map it to other things. In simpler here, we can't actually map it to too many things, mainly just volume because it is a simple device, hence the name. But if I turn this simpler into a sampler and go into the MIDI section, now I can start mapping velocity to whatever I want. And in fact, let's say I didn't want to map the velocity to the volume. I think it's in the filter and global section where this volume velocity mapping section is. If I turn that to 0, now the velocity won't affect the volume of the snare at all. And I can go into MIDI and let's just assign this to like pitch or something. And this is the amount, just like the amount over here, this one. This is the amount of mapping to the pitch. So let's put it all the way up, and you'll see that now, as I change the velocity of this, it's going to change the pitch. So this is where the concept comes from. In fact, I could just make the cheesiest snare roll in the world by, if I hold Command, now I can draw a straight line, and here we go. Sounds like Mario. There you go. So why this is useful is because we can change any parameter on a per note basis, because velocity is per note, right? So when it comes to sound design, it really opens up the creative possibilities. Okay, so how is this sound made then? Some really nice movement in there. I'm just going to take off all the things that aren't velocity mapped. The filter's not velocity mapped. Some of these effects aren't velocity mapped either. And then I'll A/B the difference between what the velocity is actually doing. That's with the velocity mapping. If I turn off this velocity device, pretty bland, right? Turn it on. Interesting. As simple as that. Tutorial done. Okay, so first of all, we need to create some randomized velocity. There's many different ways of doing this, and I'm sure if you're in another DAW, there's a way of doing it in that one. In Ableton 11, I can actually just pull up this velocity range, and this is going to completely randomize it within this range. But for the sake of people that aren't in Ableton 11, this is how I did it with the velocity device. I'll just delete it and get another velocity device. What you want to do is set both the out high and the out low to 64, which is right in the middle of the velocity spectrum, and then turn the random knob all the way up to 64 as well. So now it's just going to randomize the velocity just completely. And so that is the first step. Next, it goes without saying, but you should be using a synth or some sort of device that is velocity mappable, or that you can map velocity to stuff that's just not just volume or level. Serum is a great one because it's really easy to use, and you can see visually over here what is happening to the velocity. So it's moving all around, right? And I'm just going to remove all the destinations from here, and then let's explain what's going on here. So I've got this sine wave here that's actually quite low, and I have enabled oscillator B and just selected a waveform that has, you know, other things that I can morph between, right? In this case, it worked really well with the basic WRD waveform, and this just morphs between a whole bunch of different oscillator waveforms. And what I've then done is gone over to here and selected FM from B, and so this oscillator B is going to be FM modulating, frequency modulating oscillator A, and as I turn this up, you can hear that sine wave FM, right? So crank that up a little bit, and now, as you can see, as I change through the wavetable position, it's going to modulate it in different ways. And so what I then did is just mapped this velocity over to the wavetable position. All of a sudden, you have a really cool effect. And this, once understanding how this works, now you have endless freedom to just go crazy and do whatever you like with this. You could map it to filter positions. I've used a comb filter in here. You can map it to effects as well. You can map it to this velocity from B amount. Let's do that. Maybe like this. But if I go down here, it becomes more sine wavy, so I want to keep it quite high. Let's map it to some effects as well. Where it really shined is mapping it to this filter here. So I've done a high pass filter and then cranked this resonance quite a lot. And you can hear, as I sweep through it, if I turn the mix up, you can really hear that resonance, right? So I want it to be jumping around the place. And if I turn that mix down a bit and then map the velocity over here to the cutoff here, then now it's going to really start creating some cool resonant sort of effects. Awesome. And then I just chucked some your Serum effects on there, and all of a sudden you've got this crazy sound. So again, just recapping, we have a velocity device which is randomizing the velocity, and then we're just mapping, in this case, the velocity, different velocity from each note, to just a whole bunch of different parameters in here, which is creating a really cool generative melody. So this one's actually a sound that I created from my last tutorial on gates, but I used velocity mapping in this case, and this is the effect that it gave. Cool, so every time this note plays, which is just being repeated, it's just being repeated every time. There's nothing crazy going on, it's just a MIDI clip repeating. And yeah, every time this note plays, it has a different texture. And that's because I've mapped the velocity to oscillator positions and filter positions and a little bit of amp here as well. So every time it plays, you can see this filter sort of moving spots now it's down here, and same with the oscillator position. There's some LFOing going on in these oscillators. So if I turn that off, you'll be able to see over here. See how it's here now? Oh, there we go. Now it's here. Now it's, yeah, so it's changing spots. And that is a really cool technique to give a little bit of different texture each time the note plays, and just have it evolving. And when this was in the loop, it kind of feels like it does its own thing, like arrangement wise. It goes down and into like more chill sections and then comes back up, and it's really interesting to listen to. And again, it's as simple as just mapping a whole bunch of stuff. So in fact, if I just map pitch, like this is going to be crazy, but that's crazy. Yeah, you can, as you know, we can map anything to velocity now, and this is just another technique that was a lot of fun to do. So for the last example, I thought we'd just go through and make something from scratch together, and just see how it goes. I'm going to use a sampler device this time because, as we know, we can do some really cool velocity mapping features with sampler, but simpler is a bit more limited. So I've got this stab chord here. Oh, no, this one's better. And I'm just going to do some like filter movements. So first things first, let's just make a MIDI clip and put some notes in. Maybe like, well, we're on 16th. Oh, 16th. And like just chuck some notes in. See how this goes. And it sounds really annoying right now, but it will become better. Don't you worry. Firstly, we're going to have to randomize the velocity. So I'm going to go grab my velocity device and I'm just going to, randomize it all the way. Now the velocity is changing, but there's no mapping going on, and we want that. We want some things other than velocity be changing, remember. So I'm going to go to, where was it? The filter and global section. And this is the volume velocity mapping. I'm going to turn that off. And then just mapping to like filter frequencies is such a cool effect that I'm really loving at the moment. And it's kind of doing something, I feel, but remember, we have to like sort of play around with this filter. I think maybe a bandpass. Yeah, cool. And I'm also going to map, turn this up a bit more. So now it's like real generative and bleepy. Really random. I'm gonna map filter resonance as well and sort of turn that up a little bit, not too much. Yep. And this, I think, would sound really cool if we just did some basic processing on it now. This thing is really calling for different reverbs and delays. Let's pull up just delay and a reverb as well. I'm going to group these, Command G, and pull up, show the chains, and then make a new chain. So this is going to be my dry one, that to the top, dry, and just for laziness, I'm not going to name this one. Combining reverbs and delays with an auto filter, that's an auto pan, an auto filter, and like a bandpass that's moving around. With this amount LFO, this is hopefully going to sound cool. And maybe like one more that's like echo. Can I drag this? Yep. Yeah, nice. And then like put a resonance boost around 1K is a really good way of making that sort of like dub effect. And maybe make this one like ping pong. And this dry one, we could even like saturate it a little bit. So now we have this cool evolving thing that's just from modulating the filter to move around via the velocity. Let's put in some other stuff and try and get this grooving a bit. So here's something I prepared earlier, just a respace that is being velocity mapped as well. And let's hope that it's in the right key. Yes. So now this one's operator. I didn't realize until I made this that you can actually map velocity in operator as well. If you go to this little panel down here into velocity, I've mapped it to filter resonance and the filter frequency a little bit. A lot to the resonance, a little bit to the frequency. So now each note that's played, yeah, it just changes a little bit. And now we've got this. Now if you drag in a drum loop, we've got a tune on our hands. It's brewing. And that's how you make it into the Beatport Top 100. Just velocity map a few things and you're good to go. Cool. That's it. That's all I wanted to show you. Just how you can leverage velocity mapping in a few different ways and just really utilize this awesome creative feature. I've been using it so much and I've been really loving it, and I hope that you do as well. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, share it around, give it a like, it really helps us, and subscribe if you like the content. I'll be posting more videos to come. So until next time, I'll see you then.